A dimension of tastes, a dimension of instinct, and a dimension of measurement. You're moving into a land of both sugar, spice, and of temperatures, and times. You just crossed over into...
Good morning and welcome to Monday morning at our home. Because it's Monday, you might be able to see the clock in the picture. It's 9:45 and we're making breakfast. Don't judge. So we're going to start with some rice. Even though we're not having that for breakfast, two of the things we're going to be making today are best made with cold rice. So I'm going to show you how to cook rice. Easiest thing you're ever going to do. All right, number one. There's obviously white rice, brown rice, jasmine rice, long grain rice, short grain rice, and a lot of other things that are just going to make your head hurt. For now, I'm going to show you the rice that I like best. Good old Uncle Ben's converted rice. It's what they call parboiled, meaning that it's been partially cooked, the starch rinsed out of it, and then dried. The reason that I like this rice is that when you cook it, it's easier to separate the individual grains of rice, which if you're doing something like coating it with a sauce, we're going to make fried rice later, you get a better taste, a lot less clumps, especially, as I told you, if you start with cold rice. Okay, the proportions to cooking rice are very simple. It is 1 part rice to 2 parts water and a little bit for what the heck. So this is 3/4 cup of rice, and so I've added 1.5 cups of water to my saucepan. From here, it doesn't get very complicated. We are going to let this water boil. You might be able to see some steam lines coming off it already. Once the water boils, I am going to dump this rice in. Okay, my water has a little rolling boil to it. I'm happy. Here I go. Just make sure that it's all mixed in, because you want it all under the water. We're going to cover it. We're going to turn off this heat, and we are going to let it sit there for 30 minutes. That is rice. Now, there is a measuring method that my husband Jack likes to use, which he describes as the volcano method, which is you put some water in a pot, and then you pour the rice directly in until it just comes over the surface of the water, like a volcano. And then, same deal, let it come back to a boil, stir it a little bit, let it sit 30 minutes, you're done. So, that's rice. Now, after this has had a chance to cool down, we're going to come back and we're going to make two things. We're going to make fried rice, which is a great way to use any little thing you have in your fridge. And in this case, we're going to make vegetable fried rice because my daughter reminded me that we have to have some vegetarian dishes in here. And then we're going to make rice pudding, also vegetarian if you don't mind eggs and milk. And a reminder to all of you, rice is gluten-free. So if you are a GF fan, and I have a lot of friends who are, this is not going to be a problem for you. So that's step 1 of rice. We'll come back to that later. So we're going to make a very simple side dish here. It's just called rice with peas. I have cooked some rice the way that we demonstrated the last time. So we put it in boiling water, 2 parts water to 1 part rice. We turned it off when it had come back to a boil, and then we let it sit for 30 minutes with the lid on. So now I've got this wonderful saucepan of perfect rice that we had made. What I'm doing right now is I've got just 1 teaspoon of butter that I'm melting down. I have got half an onion, and I'm going to simply Throw this onion into the melted butter, and I'm going to saute it until translucent. It's a really simple recipe, but believe it or not, it came from a New York Times column, Peter Franey's 60-Minute Gourmet. While this is turning just translucent, I thought I would tell you everything we're having for dinner tonight and the cost of it. On Thursdays, you can go to Fresh Market and get a fully cooked rotisserie chicken for $5. Costco usually has deals as good, but honestly, folks, waiting in line at Costco right now is about more than my crazy can stand. So Thursday is a good day to go over and get that from Fresh Market. In the current environment, there is a limit of 2 chickens, but that's really no big problem for us. So I've got rice with peas. I have the other half of my onion with the zucchini, and that is sauteing on the back burner with some bruschetta I'm going to toss in, and a little bit of garlic. And that, with a slice of bacon left over from Saturday morning breakfast, is going to become our second veg. We've got some romaine lettuce that we're going to make into Caesar salad with croutons and some dressing. And there's a loaf of sourdough in the oven. It's a miniature loaf, like the size that you would use for a sub. That means I need to check my rice pudding, but we're going to get this done first. Okay, here's my sauteed onion. I'm adding in the rice. So I added up the cost of all of this. The cost of all of my sides, including the bread and the salad, is $4. Now that accounts for that little scoop of bruschetta I just threw into the zucchini, the garlic, the splash of olive oil it took to saute this zucchini, and the teaspoon of butter I have going. So it's $4 for sides, bread, salad, and my chicken was $5. So 9 people, I'm going to get 4 hearty portions. By contrast, when I was in the market today, I saw that they have takeout dinners, and I know a lot of you are doing a lot of takeout right now. So for $9, I could get dinner for one. $8.99 at that market got me a single entree portion, 2 sides, and a roll. So you can have $9 and eat once from that market. And trust me, most markets that you take out are going to be the exact same price. Or you can take a couple minutes, cook all of this, and you'll have dinner for 4. That's why we're filming this series. We want to give you the opportunity to choose that. Okay, I am finishing this up by putting in 1 cup of frozen peas. I am going to stir this. I'm going to leave the lid on to give those peas a chance to defrost, to mix in with the rice. We don't want to overcook them, so we're going to turn off the heat, let everything sit. That's rice with peas, and that is dinner at our house. Enjoy the video. Good evening. It is Tuesday night in our house, and I'm going to continue our little exploration with rice, baby. And we're going to make fried rice. Fried rice is a wonderful garbage dish. Most of the vegetables that you have in the house, with the exception of probably lettuce, can go very well in fried rice.
Smell it! That's fucking older than me!
You don't need a lot, and it's a wonderful let's clean out the refrigerator dish. So I'm going to go through the veggies that we have and the seasonings that we have, and then we are going to make some fried rice. So I just went in the refrigerator, and here is what I found. I had a half of an onion already cut up. I had some mushrooms that frankly were past their wonderfulness date. See, they're not all white and happy like mushrooms usually are. They're looking kind of maybe in a few days we're not going to want to be eating these. These are perfect for fried rice. I have some leftover broccoli florets. I had a miniature red bell pepper, which is wonderful for color. And in pride of place here, I have some asparagus tips. These are actually left over because one day when Jack and Stephen were making dinner, I fell asleep and I said, don't cook my asparagus until I wake up. Well, it's 4 days later and I woke up. So, you need a regular old frying pan. You do not need a wok. Something with low sides is a good idea. And you're going to need some type of oil. Now, the internet recipe that I found recommends something I've never tried before, which is frying the rice in butter. And we very much believe Julia Child's saying that, Stephen?
One can never have too much butter.
Right. And Julia Child also says life is too short for fake butter or fake people.
And let me say this, is there anything better than butter? Think it over. Every time you taste something that's delicious beyond imagining, and you say, what is in this? The answer is always going to be butter.
It's incredible.
It's been whisked into submission, that's why. The day there's a meteorite heading toward the Earth, and we have 30 days to live, I am going to spend it eating butter. Here's my final word on the subject. You can never have too much butter.
Again, you can get butter on the buy one, get one. If you're really lucky and you've got somebody who works in a takeout restaurant, you can get little pats of butter and you can put those aside. In fact, when we get to the soy sauce, I'm going to show you our soy sauce and seasonings collection, which is also absolutely free. In the meanwhile, you are going to need to pick up a bottle of soy sauce. Again, you can get soy sauce at the dollar store. It's actually pretty cheap, even if you don't get it at the dollar store. And you are going to need some garlic. This is my dollar store garlic. It's already chopped. I like it a lot. You're going to need some kind of ginger. I like squeezy ginger, just because you don't have to strip all that gnarly, horny stuff off of the ginger root, and you can squeeze it right in. Trader Joe's also has wonderful frozen ginger in little teaspoon-like nuggets. And you're going to want a little bit of sesame oil. You put this in at the very, very end for a very strong flavor. And if you have it, you can get some oyster-flavored sauce. Cheapest Chinese seasonings I found are actually at Chinese markets. If you're lucky, they'll have English on the labels. If not, you'll have to find some nice person and ask them for help. You can also get a lot of this stuff at Trader Joe's, and there is sort of an international grocery store near us called Food Fair, which also has these. All right, first step in fried rice, you gotta crack an egg. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna wallop this guy in the parchment. We're gonna crack it into a bowl with a friend. Believe it or not, scrambled eggs are one of the foundations of fried rice. So here I am, not adding milk this time like I would if I was scrambling eggs for breakfast. Wow, that yolk didn't want to pop, did it? Okay, so I've got my egg. I'm going to put a pinch of salt in it. Stephen is going to move over to be tight on the frying pan, and I'm just going to start chucking stuff in. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to put this egg in. And my pan is hot enough that it is cooking this egg right away, which is just how I like it. And got two choices here. You can scramble the egg, or you can do it like a big old flat omelet. And then you're going to tip it out and chop it. Here goes my hand. Woo, hello. And I'm grabbing a plate to put this on. Honestly, I pretty much don't care if I am chopping this or if I'm scrambling it. So I'm just going to move it around and get it cooked, which is the point, isn't it? So here I am. So I am using butter because, like I said, we're trying this experiment. We've never done it before. But if you're going to use oil, use an oil with a pretty high frying temperature. The best oil for that is peanut oil. But we do not use peanut oil in the household for a very specific reason that I'm going to let Stephen tell you.
Deadly allergic. It ain't pretty if I come in contact with it.
So we don't use peanut oil because it would kill Stephen. We like Stephen, he's operating the camera, we don't want to kill him. So if you do not want to use butter, you can use any oil that doesn't have a strong flavor. So canola oil is fine, corn oil is fine. Grapeseed oil is great because it has a very, very high temperature point before it burns. And grapeseed oil is one of those things you get really cheap at strange places like Big Lots and little gourmet markets and Tuesday Morning and Marshalls and Home Goods. We have no idea why, you just can't. Or you can just get it at your grocery store. Okay, so here's our scrambled egg. I've actually got some on the stovetop. Ta-da. And I'm going to abide by the 3-second rule. Just chuck that right on the plate. Okay, now here comes some more butter or oil, if that's what you've got going. Now, you need to pay a bit of attention to the heat at which you are going to fry these veggies. The order that you want to put your veggies in is going to depend on how long they take to cook. So let's take a look at what we've got here. We've got an onion, which is always going to take a while. We've got carrots, which are pretty rigid. We've got broccoli. Those are the 3 veggies here that are going to take the longest to cook. You're going to notice that I'm just whacking at this broccoli. I don't need this to be pretty. I don't need this to be in little individual dices. I don't need to hear Gordon Ramsay telling me, piss off, as I do my chopping. I'm just whacking this up. I'm making fried rice, and it's going to be good no matter what shape my veggies are. So these are going to be the veggies that are going to go in first. Always going to start with the onions because you want to give them a chance to sweat and release some of their juice and some of their sugars. After that, I'm going to put in the carrots and the broccoli together. We're going to put that pepper in at the same time as the mushrooms. And then the last thing we're going to put in is that gorgeous asparagus. Because asparagus only needs a little bit of heat to release all its fabulousness. You see we had some green onions out there on my parchment piece, but we're not going to cook those. We are going to put those in last. And I'm going to show you how forgiving the vegetables can be when I cut the green onions. I've got some very, very wonderful new green onions, and I've got some green onions so old and ratty, you would have thought you were going to throw them out, but if you're making fried rice, they live again. You can call this resurrection rice because all of your old junky vegetables are reborn into a beautiful new dish. It's a great company dish, great dish when you're on your own. You can reheat it. We find the best way to reheat something like this, come here, little onion, get in there, is to wrap it in foil and shove it in your oven. If you want it to steam and get fluffy again like rice, you can seal that foil packet up real tight. If you want it to get crispy, you don't seal the packet up at all. You roll the sides down and you let the heat get at it. So something like hash or fried chicken, for example, I would leave open when I reheat it. I am not going to answer that phone. I don't know who it is, but I'm calling them back because right now, you, dear viewer, and our rice are much, much more important. Okay. So my onions have got a pretty good start. I'm grabbing my bench scraper. If you haven't got a bench scraper, clean box top works fine. Anything you can pick up and scoop in. Cut up edge of a paper plate. That'll do it for you. I'm putting in my carrots and my broccoli. That's why you need a scraper. And I'm telling my salmon to just wait a minute, and I'll be right back. I'm going to add my garlic at this point. Now, this fork has had egg on it, but I need something quick, so I'm just going to use the other end of the fork, and that way I'm not getting nasty old raw egg and my beautiful garlic, but it'll get in there. That's the equivalent of about 3 cloves of garlic, which is good for 3 or 4 servings of rice, and that's what we're making. Ginger goes in much later because if you burn your ginger, it's hard to rescue a dish like that. So, here we are. You're going for crisp tender. You're not going for overcooked here. So, we're talking minute, 2 minutes for this. So, I am just stirring these guys around. Just giving them enough of a cook so that they're noticeably not raw, but they're going to keep some bite. These guys are going to continue to cook after I get the peppers and the rice, and the mushrooms in. The mushrooms are going to actually release quite a bit of liquid. You're going to be very surprised when you see this. I think that sauteed mushrooms are one of the things you always keep around in your fridge. When you've got mushrooms, saute them in some olive oil or some butter. Put them in a little screw top jar or a little Tupperware. Anything that will keep it tight so you're not absorbing other flavors from the fridge, and that's your point. And you can add them into anything. You're making an omelet, you've got some mushrooms, you've got some canned chicken stock going, you can stir in a little mushroom. The taste for that we call umami. What is umami? Who the hell knows? It is a word that was invented, what, 5-6 years ago, Stephen? And cooked mushrooms in butter are pretty much the definition of umami. It's the savory goodness that comes from the earth that you love, and that is an umami taste. Okay, now it's time for these asparagus. These asparagus are tips. If they were whole big pieces of asparagus, you would break them off like that, and they would naturally come off at the woody end. And you would throw that part away. I have an awful lot of asparagus here, so I can afford to be very picky and only use the part of the asparagus that I love the best, which is the absolute tip. I don't have to bother with the stalk strips. So I'm throwing these in. I'm going to give a little squeezy of ginger. Maybe 1 to 2 tablespoons of ginger. Whoa, and a big splash for the countertop. Sorry about that. And now all of this is done and wonderful. It's actually sticking a little bit to the pan. So when that happens, it's time for more butter. In we go. Working a bit faster at this point because my veggies are in their meaty business. Everybody's sizzling. And I'm going to turn down my heat a little bit. I want more control. Okay, here we are. Butter's going good. We are going to push the veggies to one side of the pan. Now, they're going to have a little bit of charbroil, which is perfect. That's the difference between, look, I put raw vegetables in, and I'm cooking something good. That char is when the flavor really starts to shine. And here's my rice. Remember what we said? You gotta have cold rice. So my rice is good and cold. That way, it's not going to get that ooey, sticky quality to it. That's about 2 cups of rice. I'm saving the rest of this because later on I want to make a little rice pudding for it. But I am just reheating my rice. And I'm going to introduce it to my veggies now that everybody's got a good steam. Now I've got a beautiful, colorful dish already, and it's time to put in the rest of our seasonings. I've got a little cup measure here, and it's got 3 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of the oyster sauce. That's really optional. If you have it, it's good. And just a half teaspoon of the sesame oil, because that is very, very strong stuff. A traditional rice recipe at this point would also put in some frozen peas. We checked the recipe right before we got started and found, whoops, didn't have any frozen peas. So we're leaving them out, and our rice is going to be just as good. Okay, we are turning off the heat now. And we are going to do 2 things. We're going to add in our eggs again. Blam. I'm always amazed when I do this at how much more color that little bit of yellow egg is lending to our rice. Oh, I promised I was going to show you our seasoning stash. And here it is. This is everything we collect from every time we do takeout. So I've got honey in here, I've got mustard, I've got the good Chinese mustard, not from the Korean deli like it says on the Big Bang Theory, and Stephen will riff that for you later. I've got duck sauce, and more importantly, I got a boatload of soy sauce here. So if you haven't got a lot of soy sauce in the house, you just need to get a couple of egg rolls from Chinese takeout, and you can load up on a handful of soy sauce, and duck sauce, and the good mustard. Okay, last step here is I am going to chop a good onion from a new batch, and I'm going to chop an old tired onion, and you'll see how versatile rice is. See how this is all burned out and nasty, and it's got this old papery coating? Well, since I'm making, this is just a topping for fried rice, all I got to do is peel off the old crabby bits, and I get down to the attractive part of the onion, and voila, one beautiful resurrected onion that I can put on top of my rice, along with this lovely new onion. I took off the parts that wouldn't be as tender. Here I go, rolling motion, fingers tucked in, as I chop, down to the very end. I take this just as it is. That's my color, and that, my dear friends, is fried rice. An incredibly cheap, something for nothing dish. I hope you enjoy. Good evening. It is Thursday night at our house, and we're going to have rice pudding for dessert. Rice pudding is one of those nursery style dishes. If you're not a fan of Peter Pan, you don't know what I mean by nursery, but what I mean is that space where the children lived and slept together when all were very young, and they ate comforting foods that bring back memories of when everything was absolutely perfect in your life. So rice pudding is a very inexpensive dish, and you probably have most of the things on hand that you need to make it. We're going to make a very small serving of rice pudding. This is probably going to serve maybe 3 or 4 people as a dessert. And all we need is, I've sprayed a small dish. This is probably a 1/4, 1.5 quart dish, but anything you have around that you can put in the oven is fine. And I'm going to put in this saucepan 2 cups of whole milk. Now, we don't drink whole milk at our place. We drink 2%. So I had some half and half that we use for coffee and tea. I threw that in, and voila, the same richness as whole milk. Then only a 1/4 cup of rice is going to go in this 2 cups of milk, and it's going to simmer away. This is a 1/4 cup of sugar. The recipe said white. I'm a big fan of brown sugar in rice pudding because it gives that almost mapley sweetness to it. And the only thing we need for now is a little pinch of salt. And we're going to bring this to a boil and then turn the heat right down and simmer it for 15 minutes. Then when we take it out of the pan and put it in here, you're going to see me add vanilla and a little bit of nutmeg and a tablespoon of butter for added richness. So we're going to put this on the stovetop. Off we go, and we'll see you in 15. Okay, so a lot has happened in the 12 minutes that we gave this rice to simmer. The first thing that happened was I did not keep an eye on the pot, and it boiled over. That's really messy. The milk didn't scald, so it's all perfectly useful, but I made a really bad mess on the stovetop. When that happens, the first thing you've got to do is turn off your burner and get the pot off. We did that. We threw another 1/4 cup of milk in to make up for what boiled over after we cleaned everything, and we did a pretty good job because right now the kitchen does not smell like burned milk. You will eventually make a mistake like this, and what you will learn is you cannot rescue scalded milk. No matter what you do, it's always going to taste terrible. You got to throw it out and start again. That didn't happen to us because I was standing right by the stove. I heard the sound and I acted pretty quickly. So, our rice and milk have simmered for 12 minutes. Now, we're going to do a really slow bake. So, a teaspoon of vanilla, a tablespoon of butter, and a pinch of nutmeg. We have the recipe, and the original recipe called for a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, so we're really just doing a pinch of nutmeg here. We are going to stir all of this up because we want to just melt that butter in a little bit. And then I'm going to put it in this greased baking dish, and you're not going to believe how low and slow this is going to cook. It is going to cook for an hour at 300 degrees, and we are going to stop and stir it every 20 minutes. So turn on a movie, bake your rice pudding. So that'll be a stir at 20, a stir at 40, a stir at 60. And after that, we're going to leave it alone and let it bake for 40 minutes until it gets little golden brown spots on the top, which means that the sugar has caramelized a bit to add that deep flavor to it. Okay, everything is stirred in. I'm not working on a hot burner, by the way. I'm just doing this on the stovetop so you can see what I'm at. Pouring it into the dish. I'm going very slowly because this, once the rice hits, it's going to splash back. Okay, I'm going to scrape all the rice in there. You can see in the shot that the rice is partially cooked now. It's no longer all solid and grainy. It's a bit puffier than it was, got some more texture to it, instead of just being hard lumps, but it's nowhere near done, which is why it's going to have to hang out for a while. If it were done, you wouldn't have this soup look where you've got milk and separated rice. So, I'll show you what it looks like after an hour, and then we'll show you what it looks like when we're done. See you in a bit. So, this was a smaller batch, and that's why I'd like to let you know that it took the full hour of stirring every 20 minutes, and then the end was 30 to 40 minutes, but I checked it after 30, and this is exactly what you want it to look like. Golden brown with little dots, which is basically the butter began to brown and have that nut-like quality that browned butter can have. So, look how thick this is now. I'm standing the spoon right up in it. Okay, get your mind out of the gutter. So, with only a 1/4 cup of rice and 2 cups of milk, we easily made 4 hearty servings. And rice pudding can be eaten warm as a dessert. It can be eaten cold, almost like an ice cream. And it's a decent breakfast food too. Rice and milk in England, where this recipe came from, was one of the classic combinations of food that you would give children or invalids. Easy on the digestion. Remember the brat diet, bananas, rice, apples, and toast? Well, this is the rice. So what do you do with it? Well, you can eat it exactly as is. You can put a little bit of jam on the top. You can drizzle it with maple syrup, especially good if your rice pudding is warm. You can have it cold with whipped cream, or you can just sprinkle a little cinnamon sugar over the top. Hot or cold, rice pudding works. And it's inexpensive, good, and homemade for you and your loved ones. Enjoy.
appetit.